It's time for the Double Stop with Brian Sword.
Welcome to the Double Stop Podcast. I'm Brian Sword. Today I'm reporting in from day 3 of NOM 2015, and I have something a little special. Instead of talking to vendors, I'm talking to the director and some of the stars of the new documentary Hired Gun. For those who haven't heard yet, Hired Gun is a new documentary on musicians who are hired on with established acts, and it tells their story. Now, I gotta say, I love this project. There are lots of rock docs out there, but this one's different. It's got great production value, it's got great corporate support, thanks to Monster Cables, and it has a ton of great stars looking to be a part of it. But most importantly, it has a great story. All those unsung heroes who have come in to support major stars. First up is an interview with the director, Fran Strine. He explains the history of the project and how it all came together.
The idea and inspiration for this film came from Jason and I just starting a conversation. You know, he loves documentaries. I love documentaries. And with the success of some of these great music films that came out over the last couple of years, The Wrecking Crew, 20 Feet from Stardom, Dave Grohl's film, Sound City, we're like, we got to do one that's better than these films. You know, what could we do that's a little edgier, more contemporary, a younger crowd will get it, you know, and it also introduced them to some of the older players too to show them some love and respect, and we're like, came up with this really cool concept of the Hired Gun. So, you know, in seeking out some people and coming up with ideas, I was like, we need some controversy, we need some depth to the film. It can't just be a bunch of talking heads just, you know, doing behind the music kind of interviews. So we're like, who's the most controversial guys we can find? And the first one was Liberty DeVito, man. He had a 30-year career with Billy Joel that did not end well. Lawsuits, suicides.
Oh, really?
Yeah, near homelessness. So I reached out. I didn't know how to get a hold of him first. You know, he's got no agent. There's no website. There's nothing. But I found him on Facebook, and I shot him a private message, and he responded with a phone call the next day. Yeah. Wow. So he's like, I'm interested. What do I got to do? I was like, you just got to let me interview you, man. Where are you? How can I get a hold of you? So we flew to Los Angeles, where he was at the time, interviewed him. And after the interview, we knew we had to get more on him. I was like, we got to do a deep character study on this guy because this story's insane. So we flew to New York, spent a week with him. It was incredible. Really cool. And then after him, the next thing I want to go was Rudy Sarzo because he has such a great, legendary career. And he said yes immediately. So we got him. And after that, it was just like a snowball effect, man. Everybody wanted to be in the movie and share their stories, and they weren't really timid or afraid to talk about it. And because of my relationships with some of these guys, you know, I feel like I was able to get the best out of them, you know, with the trust level, right? So that's how it started. And right now we're in the last week of filming. We're here at the NAMM show 2015 at the Monster booth. You know, they're a big supporter of our film and partnered with us in it. We'll be doing some heavy promotions, but we're doing an all-star jam with the entire cast that's available to come in one room, the old school, the new school, the up-and-comers, and just doing an all-star jam. That'll be in the film and also available as a soundtrack.
And what about the soundtrack? How is that coming together?
It's coming along great, man. You know, a lot of people probably don't know, but like the Justin Derricos that play with Pink and is on The Voice, even Jason Hook, who else? John Five. They all have solo careers outside of playing with Rob Zombie and Five Finger Death Punch, and they're all going to contribute music for the soundtrack as well as in addition to the original material that we'll be doing next week.
Now, what's your history as a filmmaker? How'd you get into this?
I got into it. It's such a long story, but in a nutshell, I started off as a photographer for all the old school metal magazines. You know, like Metal Edge, Hit Parader, Rolling Stone, and I did my first music tour as a photographer in 1999 with a tour called Tattoo the Earth, and I brought a Sony Handycam with me and just started documenting the tour. And I was like, this is a lot more fun than taking a still image that somebody's going to look at one time unless it's an iconic image, and that's the end of it. So I started doing video, and fell in love with it, and quickly found out I paid a lot more money than photography. So, you know, the downshift of the music industry where people started buying records my job became valuable because people needed it for social medias, bonus content, and like if you buy a digipack CD, like I've done making of, worked for Stained for about 7 years. So I was in the studio with those guys for 14 months total.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, documenting their album cycles and putting it together, and you buy the album and there's a flip DVD of the making of the album. Yeah. So I did that with those guys, Nickelback, Seether, Three Doors Down, you name it, man.
So is that basically training to prepare you for this project?
Yeah, man. The documentary thing is kind of cool because there's not really a plot line. You kind of build the story. And that's what we did here. And I'm like, there's always a common thread with these guys. There's definitely a brotherhood to all this. But the way these guys got into it is all different. Where they wound up was all different. Some guys are still struggling to get to that level, And a guy like Jason Hook, started off with Mandy Moore, Hillary Duff, then on to Vince Neil, then Alice Cooper, and then Bullet Boys even. Yeah, for sure, you did your homework. And then, Five Finger came pecking around, and he's like, I got a really good job with Alice Cooper. I made good money. He tours a lot.
Yeah, it's not as easy a decision as it seems.
No, he does a lot of touring. And he's like, I will join your band if you make me an equal member. And they agreed to it. And now they're super successful. He's making a ton of money. He's writing hit songs.
Yeah.
So his talent's shining through.
And in terms of post-production, you're almost wrapped filming. How much footage do you have? Because I saw that you did a 4-hour interview with Steve Vai. So if that's indicative.
Yeah. Man. If I were to nail it down to hours, probably 1,000 hours, 1,200 hours. Yeah. We have 50 terabytes. We shot this thing. The production is incredible. It's not some shitty-looking documentary. We've shot it on the Red, all in 4K. Grip trucks everywhere with pro lighting, pro audio. We're mixing the film at Skywalker Ranch with the Lucas family there, so I'm very happy about that. And look for a late 2015 release in the fall.
And will there be multiple versions of this with all that footage?
Well, one of the ideas is to use the film as a springboard for a miniseries. Because we definitely have the footage. Yeah. There's no doubt, and we still got people knocking on our door to do interviews. So.
Next up, I have Jason Hook, who most people will know from Five Finger Death Punch. He's had a whole career as a hired gun for a range of stars, from Mandy Moore to Vince Neil.
Well, my story is kind of unique in the respect that I used to be a hired gun. I've gone in and out where I was in Canada, from Canada, and right on Toronto. So, I started off as a young band that was trying to make it. We got a record deal, we never went anywhere, and so I kind of got frustrated with trying to be an artist. Moved down to the States, started doing hired gun work for other artists, but it was always nagging at me that I was supposed to be more creative. That being a hired gun for me was not really where I wanted to be. So anyway, flash forward to Death Punch and the success that the band's had. We were on tour with our videographer, and he was talking about he was jonesing to make another documentary film, and it kind of caught my ears. Like, what do you mean? You make films, And that's how the whole thing started, I said. And then we came to the conclusion that, this topic would be easy for me to not only tell my story, my experiences, and how it compares to what's happening with me now, but also I could pull in some favors and call my friends that are still, working. So.
And are you an official producer on the film then as well?
Oh, yeah.
And is this your first endeavor in film?
Yeah, well, of this kind of film, yeah.
Now, what I want to know about that is, it's a common thing. Like George Lynch is doing a film, and there's different things. When people jump in and do their first film, they may not understand just how massive an undertaking it is. It's overwhelmingly large, and I understand. You have 50 terabytes of footage to go through, which is probably going to be around 300 hours that you're going to have to boil down. So if you knew then what you know now, would you have jumped in so quickly?
Yeah, I think so. there really is never the perfect time for anything. You just got to. I found that the best way to start things is to assemble the right team, and establish a team so that you don't discover that it was too much for you as an individual. Right. Yeah. So you put a team of people in place. So I still have a tremendous amount of work and responsibility with Death Punch. That's like gobbling up 95% of my life. And I really wish I were more available to be more hands-on with the film. But what I did was I put people in place to take care of it. Just like any CEO there's a tier of people that it breaks down. Teams looking after people, looking after teams.
And how did you get Monster involved?
Monster Cable came on. They saw our. We had a small crowdfunding campaign online. And they contacted us, said, take the campaign down. We want to jump in and be a sponsor. And, they've been awesome.
And how did that change things in terms of production of the film?
Well, look, anytime you can cross-promote with somebody, with a brand, especially somebody as big as Monster Cable, it's helpful for everybody. And, films are exciting. A lot of people see films. They last forever. It's not just like, it'll live on Netflix for, indefinitely. So I think they were, in my opinion, it was smart for them to come in and just say, we want to be the brand. And, it's been working out great. They've really helped push it along.
And what can you say about Fran as a director?
He needs to shower more.
Next up, Dave Ellefson. What I found most interesting about talking to him is how he says he grew as a musician from his time as a hired gun.
What do you mean I don't believe in God? Talk to him every day.
What was it about this film that made you want to not only be in the film, but come to an event like this and promote the film?
Fran Strine has been a dear friend of mine for probably about 10 years, and I've got to know Jason over the years, and when Fran told me the two of them were working on the film, the immediate answer was yes. And then I found out what the film was about, and I loved the concept of it. I thought it was great because our world is so full of what I would call the unsung heroes who make great artists even greater because of their contributions.
And in terms of your career, what other bands have you played with where you found yourself in a hired gun position?
Well, there was a period when I was away from Megadeth that I was out doing quite a bit of that stuff. I played with Ronnie Montrose, did some work with Soulfly, both recording and touring. I started doing a lot of recording down in Nashville, as well as stuff just kind of scattered around. And that's where I really learned. We had a couple guys come into Megadeth, Jimmy DeGrasso, drummer, Al Petrelli, guitar player, and I learned, and that was right before the group disbanded in 2002, and I learned a lot from those two guys in the few short years they were in the band, because they were never part of what I've done, which is form bands and be fortunate enough to have that big, strike that we had with Megadeth. So they spent most of their careers joining existing bands, coming in as hired musicians. So in a lot of ways, them being in Megadeth prepared me for the next season out of Megadeth to know how to do it. Yeah. And then coming back into Megadeth again, I approach the gig entirely differently, having had that experience. Yeah.
So what do you feel you learned from that time working with other bands that you were able to bring back to the band when you rejoined Megadeth?
Well, one thing that was probably made the biggest impression to me is we were in the middle of Cryptic Writings Tour in 1998, big arenas and stuff, and Jimmy DeGrasso came off the Alice Cooper gig to fly in to a show in Fresno in front of 5,000 people. Quick tweak on a couple things at soundcheck. The next time was straight on stage, 4 count, straight into Holy Wars, played an 18-song, hour-and-a-half set with literally no mistakes. And he knew that material, and I was so impressed with that. And I realized that if you're going to be like him and what he does and make your living like that, that's how good you need to be. And I approached every gig I ever did with that sort of preparedness and showing up, knowing my parts, looking good. Even when I came back to Megadeth in 2010, the call came on a Thursday. I drove over to San Diego on a Friday. I was in the band by Monday, but it was because I stayed up on the material. I kept my look together. My playing was good, and I rolled in. I approached re-entering Megadeth like how Jimmy did when he came in. Like, know all the tunes, know the parts, be prepared, and be ready to kick some serious ass.
In the past, I've interviewed Kenny Aronoff, and he talked about a similar thing where he'd go play a song with somebody, and he's charting it in the hotel, and he's walking in, and he's prepared, and he's doing his homework. Is probably homework what the biggest part of being a hired gun then?
Big time. I like to always get, say on a record date, always get material in advance, so I have some time to prepare, at least get familiar with the tunes, write my own charts, and at least walk in ready to go, because in the studio, time is money for sure. On a live show, I mean, you want to show up. I've done a few where you walk in and you're straight on stage, and I mean, there is no looking back. And, in a metal band, you can't have a music stand, right? And, you could probably come up with some kind of new iPad teleprompter or something, right, with a chart if you needed to read it. But for the most part, you really got to show up knowing your parts. And I do a lot of those things now. I have a thing called Metal Allegiance, which is like a big all-star group. And we change the entire set list from show to show. And it's about showing up and knowing and also learning some cues. Sometimes you don't know a tune as well as others, and knowing, okay, I got to cue off the guitar player. Okay, stand in a place where I can see him going into that bridge, so I remember. That's right, that's where it is. Make sure you've got your mix together so you can cue off certain people, so that if you don't know a part, you've at least got something to go to lead you in and through the song.
Now, final question: upon your return to Megadeth, I'm curious, A, if you ever felt that was going to happen, but 2, your perspective of being away from it. How did it impact when you were back in the band, in terms of maybe whether it's appreciating the band, or what other feelings did you have?
It's everything you just said. I did feel it was going to happen. I mean, Dave and I had such a long history to get rid of the founders. I mean, the fans know it as Dave and Dave, and and so I felt it would happen. But it was interesting. That season we had away, I really felt like it was not the right time to re-enter back into it in 2004. It didn't feel right to me. Dave is grown in huge ways, learning his way around the studio, learning some things about the business, and some things that he wasn't as attuned to that he knows very well now, and I'm impressed with that. It's great to see. Me, on the other hand, I again got to have a lot of these hired gun opportunities, which seriously sharpened my skills and really brought music and abilities out of me that I knew were there, but inside of one band for 20 years, I never got to let them come out. And that's the danger of always being in one setting for too long. As desirable as it is, as lucrative as it could be, as iconic and all those other things of prestige, the reality of it is it sometimes can really stifle your chops and your playing abilities, and a lot of times your creativity, to the point that I find that if you don't get time away from those things to do some other music and side things, oftentimes it comes to either you just often leave the band or the band breaks up, which is horrible. It shouldn't be that. I think you can have both.
Now I talk to Nita Strauss. Sadly, I feel like this one was kind of a missed opportunity. In listening back to the interview, I heard so many places I could have gone, but it didn't really happen. Hopefully I can get her back in the show another time for a more detailed interview. And yes, what you hear right now in the background is her shredding with Alice Cooper. So Nita, how did you come to be involved in this film?
I was approached by Fran, the director, when he was interviewing my boss, Alice Cooper. And Fran said, look, you've got this girl in your band, why don't you get her down here? Because I have a pretty unique perspective on what it's like being a female, playing rock, female hired gun. There's not that many out there. So it was cool. I'm really, I was really excited to get to come in and kind of show a little bit of a different side of the whole thing.
And how do you find the gig opportunities are being as a female?
It's hit and miss. Some people want a girl in their band, some people don't want a girl in their band. There's not really many bands that are like, I don't want a guy guitar player. There's a lot of bands that are like, I don't want a female guitar player. But at the same time, you know, I guess that's like it is with any job, you know.
And for you to be supporting the film like this, what is it about this film that makes you feel so strongly that you're out here pushing it the way you are?
You know, I think it's really cool. There's been a lot of movies about, you know, the background singers and, you know, showing different sides of all different professions. And this kind of gives us a chance to show what we do. You know, everyone knows who Billy Joel is and who Pink is and who Christina Aguilera is. But this kind of gives us a chance to show those fans a little bit about what we do to make the show happen.
And what are your future plans then outside of Alice Cooper?
I'm working on my solo album. I'm always writing, but honestly, anytime I'm off tour, you know, whenever Alice is off tour, I fill it up with something else. You know, just gotta stay working. I gotta eat.
Next up, Phil X. I'm not gonna lie, I've been trying to get him on the show for a long time. He also talks about the film and how he became involved, but we also talked about one of my favorite bass players, Randy Coven, who sadly passed away recently.
I go way back with Jason Hook, like way back, like buddies in our teens. And you know, it's when somebody says, "Hey, I'm doing something," you go, "Yeah, that sounds kind of cool," but not knowing the importance, because it's a friend, right? And, oh, it's another friend that wants to do something really cool. But then Fran, his documentarian guy, got in touch with me and he told me about it and sent me a link to check out, and I was like mind blown. It was really awesome. It's like, you know, like I'll drop everything and do this kind of thing, right? And then we found a location and then we did it, and it just, and Fran's amazing, man. He's like his style of interview doesn't even feel like an interview. You're just having a coffee, right? So it felt like really awesome, and then that made it really important to me to be involved. So, and it's not one of those things that you wake up the next day and go, man, I shouldn't have done that. You know, it's one of those things where you wake up the next day and go, that was fucking awesome, you know? So, and then they keep piling on more and more people, and it's like, wow, this is getting better and better. So it's very exciting.
And there's a lot of rock docs that come and go, and they really don't make a splash, but this one's making a huge splash. Yeah. What is it about this one that's really kind of rising to the top? I think
everybody, to hear the stories that you're hearing, like, I mean, you watch other interviews, and I try to learn something, you know, like listen to the interview, and when, you know, like Dolly Parton is being interviewed, and she goes, oh, Elvis was going to sing my song, and then they said, well, we're going to take the copyright, and I said, well, then he can't. Which means she stuck to her guns, right? She's like, that's my copyright. You can't have my copyright. And she goes, it broke my heart that Elvis wasn't singing my song. I mean, stuff like that. That stuff is so educational and important for musicians of every age, of every style of music. And this is that kind of documentary where, you know, you hear Liberty DeVito tell a funny story about Billy Joel, and you hear Rudy Sarzo talk about Randy's death. Shit like that, man. You can't get that anywhere else. So I think that's the whole premise is very, like, I don't think it's been done like that before, you know? So I think that's the attraction.
And as somebody who's played tons of sessions, lots of other bands, you've always had an original band going at the time. How important is it to you as a hired gun to always have an original piece that is your own?
Well, when you're a hired gun, your level of creative input is limited, right? Like even when I toured with Bon Jovi, I couldn't be Richie because I'm not, but I couldn't really be me. So I became this guy in the middle somewhere, that was between the two, and I delivered that guy every night, you know. So me is my band, the Drills. And it's to me that I get to go on stage. And you know what's funny? When I did the first 13 shows with Bon Jovi in 2011, on Sunday night I played in St. Louis. It was the last show. John asked me to sing the second verse of Wanted Dead or Alive, and it was in front of 20,000 people. When I came home, on Friday I played at the Roxy with the Drills, and to me it was as exciting. 200 people, my songs, doing my thing, with people in the front freaking out, and it was like, and the only thing I missed was the guitar tech.
Final question.
Where's Takumi?
Yeah, exactly. Final question. like I recall, I think I first saw you, I think it was Frozen Ghost is probably the first time.
God,
Much
yeah.
music, right?
Yeah.
'Cause
That
I'm-
was my first big gig, and my first time at Maple Leaf Gardens.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
But the first time I think I had my mind blown by your playing was with Randy Coven on Much Music.
Yeah.
And we just lost Randy, sadly. I just wanted to know if you have any thoughts of your time playing with Randy Coven.
I really learned a lot from him. And like I said, it's like the documentary, you learn from everybody you work with, right? What to do, what not to do.
Yeah.
But Randy really showed me the ropes when it came to the whole guitar entertainment thing. Because he could play anything, but he also kept it pretty showy. And, I learned, my king, I'm an Eddie Van Halen disciple. And when I saw him, when I heard Eddie before YouTube and before videos and stuff like that, that was mind-blowing. But to see my first Van Halen show when I was 14 at Maple Leaf Gardens, and he was all show, and it was like, oh my God, he's running around playing those extraordinary guitar licks. And playing with Randy was like, wow, this guy that can play anything and he was funny, and he talked to everybody, and he was very respectful to a lot of players, and it's one of those things that you can only learn from individuals like that. He was a really special guy.
And now for the legend Rudy Sarzo. I just interviewed his brother Robert, and it was really great to talk to Rudy as well. If anybody's going to have some interesting insight on being a hired gun, it's going to be Rudy Sarzo.
I was born under a bad sign.
What was it about this film that made you want to be involved, but also made you want to support it and do an event like this?
That's a good question. It's multi-layered answer and reason why. I'm very much involved with music education, and I think it's very important because right now you don't have the structure that we used to have, the industry. That, for example, musicians used to move to LA, then they come here and the industry will be here. You start playing clubs, you start making demos, you submit them, they come and watch you perform, and then you get a record deal, then they bring in a producer, they bring in artist relation, marketing, promotion. No, it's not like that anymore. It's like through YouTube, So we musicians now, see, I've been doing this for over 30 years. At this time, I should have been working with a record company because that was the norm. You play for so many years, then you join a record company, and then you become part of the mentor program, being an A&R producer or whatever. But there's no such thing anymore. So anytime that there's an opportunity for me to take part, like in a film like this, it's all of us being able to go on screen and say, okay, this is what we did. These are mistakes that we did. If you can avoid them, please do. We did some really good decisions. Make sure to follow those. And also look at the way that the industry is shaping up today. There's certain things that worked 30 years ago, 20 years ago, that do not work today. So you must address those issues. But the most important thing that I feel that we can convey with the film to the young musician is you're always auditioning. Whether you're playing in a club, you never know who's attending. Whether you're at Guitar Center, you never know who's going to be watching you, test that amplifier, or where you're at now at a booth. So the way I look at it is life is a 24/7 audition. Always be prepared.
And when it comes to the bands that you work with, when do you know the fit is right for you as a hired gun to perhaps join in an established band? What is it that tells you this is the right situation for you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you have to listen to the music. You can't take the gig just because it's a paying gig, because you're going to have to play those songs. You're going to have to live with those people. It's a family. Do you want to join this family? You want to go on the road and be in a bus with these guys, or guys and girls, and so it's very complex as far as that goes. But the most important thing, if you really want to keep the gig, not only keep the gig, but be the best contributor to the gig that you can. Always look at the legacy of the band. Check out their original recordings, because those were the filter ideas, because you're working with producers, you're working with engineers and the sounds. Then listen to the live versions of those songs, because they do evolve. And by the time you join the band, you're very educated about who and what you're playing, who you're playing with, and what songs you're playing, and how they have shaped and developed, and actually become a connoisseur of the band. Probably you're gonna get to know more about the band than the guys remember themselves being there, because you have really gone in and you study the band. So once you do that, then once you fit in, it has to be seamless. You know, it's not a matter of fitting in a square peg in a round hole. It's a matter of now you want to be that piece of the puzzle that's missing. You want to fill that piece of the puzzle, and always respect the legacy of the band. Respect the musicians that have played before you, because they are the ones who like taking the band up to that certain path, journey, and for whatever reason they're not there anymore. And in my case, I've been also one of the guys who left the band, and somebody comes in. So the only thing that I could actually ask of when somebody takes my place is that they're the best bass player that they can get their hands on, because nobody wants to get replaced by a hack.
And that ends this Nam 2015 special on the Hired Gun documentary. Thanks to Monster Cables for giving me the chance to talk to these guys. As always, you can subscribe to the show on iTunes and follow it on Twitter at The Double Stop, or on Facebook at facebook.com/TheDoubleStop.
You got your panties in a bunch again. I'm turning close, that's like a bunch again.